Greetings moviegoers, I'm the host, and today we're going to try out something a little different. Since I've been falling behind on so many projects as of late, I've decided to expand my shortcut reviews segment and kind of make it its own monthly thing, just so I could stay on top of the latest movie releases. So before I return to the editing room to complete my long list of delayed movie reviews and television reactions, we're going to take a look at 20 notable feature films that were released between the months of September and December of 2024. With that said, let's not waste any more time and dive right into this very special edition of Shortcut Reviews. Let's begin with our first category, Comic Book Woes, where we look at a few films that helped make 2024 the single worst year of comic book and superhero movies since the late 90s. But as memorably awful as those late 90s comic book movies were, I don't think any of them had as big of a reaction quite this negative as writer-director Todd Phillips' follow-up to his 2019 Oscar-winning blockbuster, Joker Folie à Deux.
Ah, the French.
When the sequel was first announced that it was going to be some kind of a jukebox musical with Lady Gaga as a co-lead, I was one of the few out there that was willing enough to give this movie a chance. After all, I really liked that first Joker movie, as controversial as it was. But as much as I could appreciate the performances and various technical aspects of the film, there really wasn't anything to be emotionally invested in this time around. I have no idea why the filmmakers would go through the time and effort to spend so much money on something that not only catered to no one, but severely tainted the legacy of its predecessor. And none of the musical numbers helped serve the story in any meaningful way, nor do they have any real justification for existing in the first place. If there's any lessons to be learned from this, it'd be to never let Todd Phillips direct another sequel to any of his past work again, and that for every bad movie musical we get, there's somehow always a worse one lurking around the corner.
Men to woman, or woman to men.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina.
Now let's look at the Marvel side of the aisle with the final two entries in the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel movies, aka SPUM, Kraven the Hunter and Venom the Last Dance. Now, I haven't been the biggest fan of the last two adventures with Tom Hardy and his alien symbiote, but I will give the third outing some credit. They did manage to close out Eddie Brock and Venom's journey in a somewhat satisfactory manner that I think most fans would appreciate. However, this movie still suffers from the same issues I had with the first two entries, like terrible dialogue, sloppy editing, and very poor excuses of world building. Anyway, it's safe to call this the best of the three Venom movies, but that really isn't saying much. Kraven, on the other hand, brother, this is the kind of bad movie you have to bring all your friends over just to make fun of after downing multiple six-packs. Not since the last feature in the SPUM series, Madam Web, have I seen a major motion picture with such an egregious amount of atrocious editing, dated visuals, awful dialogue, and bad ADR on display.
You gotta be kidding.
Ventriloquist, huh?
At least the coked up folks at Sony finally sobered up to realize that making so many lackluster Spider-Man spin-offs without Spider-Man isn't the ideal way of mirroring the success of the MCU. A step in the right direction, no doubt. Will they learn from their mistakes? That's something we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, can somebody please offer this Academy Award-winning actress some better scripts, especially ones that don't have her saying asinine lines like this?
She died not long after that trip, and I never saw her again.
Excuse me, the f did you just say?
Moving on to our next category, Animation Station, which consists of, you guessed it, animated movies that either wowed audiences or flew under the radar. Notably, our next film, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, which is another prequel set in J.R.R. Tolkien's world of Middle-earth that filmmaker Peter Jackson helped fully realize back in the early 2000s. Only this time around, they decided to go the full-blown anime route.
Hey, let's go, Kinkatsu!
I get that it wasn't everyone's cup of tea considering how well it performed at the box office, but personally, I had a really good time with this one. I was fully invested in the further expansion of the established lore, I really liked the new characters they introduced, and I really dug seeing this world that I come to love presented under a new format.
Let's fight love!
If you consider yourself a fan of anything Tolkien related, or just want a good enough excuse to jump back into this world, then you should definitely consider giving this one a shot. But if you want something that's a little more safe and familiar, like the modern look of Disney's computer animation, then Moana 2 might be more your speed. As a fan of the original myself, I was pretty excited to see more adventures with the titular heroine, voiced by Elii Carvalho, and her demigod sidekick Maui, voiced by Dwayne Johnson. However, I was a little let down to discover that this was originally supposed to be a TV series that got crudely turned into a big screen motion picture at the last minute, which not only explains the downgrade in animation in some parts, but why someone like Lin-Manuel Miranda didn't come back to write more memorable tunes this time around. It surely wasn't the worst as I feared it would be going in, but if you're going to check it out, do it the way it was meant to be seen, on the small screen. Yes. The quote-unquote live-action prequel to one of the most despised yet highly successful quote-unquote live-action Disney remakes to one of the studio's most beloved, if not the most beloved film in their roster that nobody asked for. It saddens me to no end that this is what the House of Mouse is reduced to nowadays. Recreating their classic films in a format that does nothing but strip away everything that made them so magical and wonderful in the first place. And to make matters worse, they have to make immediate follow-ups to their remakes to help solidify their dominance over the original films, which will never cease to piss me off. Even though it does try to do something a little different than its 2019 counterpart, like giving the animal characters more facial expressions and telling a new story that isn't a shot-by-shot retelling of what we've all seen before, I still found this obvious cash cow highly unnecessary. Who knows, maybe it could have benefited from the voice acting chops of Keanu Reeves, kinda like in our next pick, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which pits everyone's favorite de-uglified blue furry speedster and his pals, Knuckles and Tails, against a new vengeful adversary named Shadow, voiced by the former Baba Yaga himself. Not gonna lie, I've never really played any of the Sonic games since I was more of a PlayStation and N64 kid growing up. The only familiarity I had with the character was watching reruns of Sonic Underground early before school. Anyone out there remember this show?
Sonic Underground. Sonic Underground.
The point being, the Sonic movies rank among the few video game adaptations out there that works just as well for casual moviegoers as they do for die-hard fans, and the third entry is easily the best of the bunch. It certainly helps having someone as legendary as Jim Carrey featured as the franchise's reoccurring antagonist Ivan Robotnik, and if this is indeed his last screen appearance as this character, then you really couldn't have asked for a better send-off. The last two animated features we're going to look over in this category also happen to feature a prominent amount of robotic characters that somehow still connected with viewers worldwide, Transformers 1 and The Wild Robot. Both had a great deal stacked against them prior, with one coming off a franchise that's still trying to waft away the stink that Michael Bay left behind, and the other from an animation company that still struggles putting out consistent quality projects, with Transformers 1 going back to basics by making a fully animated origin story of the Autobots and Decepticons. The filmmakers were able to tell a much deeper story than any of the past live-action iterations. It's the first one of these movies that actually treated its core audience with the respect and dignity they deserved. Sure, it still has your typical goofball sense of humor geared towards younger viewers, but whenever it hones in on the theme of long-lasting friendships that ultimately fall apart due to understandable circumstances, it leaves a pretty big emotional impact, which really surprised the hell out of me. Nothing more to add, except this is the one Transformers movie that really earned the mantle of being more than meets the eye. As for The Wild Robot, DreamWorks finally got back to emulating the best of Pixar's success by turning out exceptional work that reduced grown-ass folks like myself to full-blown tears. From its gorgeous visuals to its triumphant score, this is another animated feature that takes a mature stance, this time on the topic of parenthood and how much one must sacrifice and alter their prior way of thinking to look out for the ones they love. In other words, this movie will make you want to call your mom as soon as the end credits start rolling. Its view on small communities coming together for the greater good deeply resonates even in this current divisive climate, and it's
practically perfect in every way.
Our third category we've got for you tonight is geared specifically for my spooky favorites, starting with the long-awaited sequel to the 1988 cult classic that helped make a name out of a young Tim Burton, Beetlejuice. Legacy sequels are a really tricky thing to come by nowadays, especially given how much time has passed since their original predecessors and how very few really live up to fan expectations. Our second go-around with A Ghost with the Most, at least for me, turned out to be the most fun I had watching a Tim Burton movie in over a decade. The commitment towards practical sets and old school effects were the things I greatly appreciated. The multitude of puns and sight gags found in the afterlife gave me some good chuckles, and it was a real treat seeing most of the original cast return, especially Michael Keaton as
Nobody says the B word.
as the titular trickster demon who looked like he had the time of his life stepping back into this iconic role. For a sequel that took 36 years to get made and missing every opportunity to go full on Hawaiian, look it up kids, there was still a surprising amount of juice still left in the tank. Since we're on the subject of sequels, I got two more to talk about, Smile 2 and Terrifier 3. Both of these films had a lot riding on their backs for following up to each of their surprise hit predecessors. The sequels promised to be bigger, bloodier, and possibly better than what came before. Did they succeed? Well, I would say that'd be the case for Smile 2, which changes focus from a psychiatrist to a rehabilitated pop star, played brilliantly by Naomi Scott, who quickly finds herself to be the latest victim of the smiling demon. The stakes feel higher, the scary imagery is more intense, the concept of a horror thriller centered on a famous celebrity and an upcoming concert is better executed here than it was in M. Night Shyamalan's blatant nepotism advertisement, and it leaves the door wide open for what could potentially be an amazing third outing. Speaking of which, the third slasher outing with Art the Clown is not for the faint of heart. Hell, I wouldn't blame anyone for not being able to make it past the first movie, but if you happen to have a strong stomach and love low-budget splatterfest films that optimize the best usage of gory, practical makeup effects, then this might be the one to bring home from the horror section of Blockbuster Video.
Blockbuster Video. Wow, what a difference.
Personally, I enjoyed the second one just a little bit more, but this is still a fun new addition for anyone who made it this far in this brutally sadistic series. It's got a great final girl performance by Lauren Lavera. The ongoing lore that they seem to make up as they go along is still somehow intriguing, and it'd make a great double billing with this holiday slasher classic.
Garbage Day. Huh? No.
Now let's switch from sequels to remakes with our next two horror updates, Nosferatu and Speak No Evil, two vastly different retellings of movies that originated in different countries. Now, this might be a hot take, but I absolutely hated the original Speak No Evil from Denmark, which tells of a vacationing family and, well, they soon regret their decision to meet new people. I get that it's a satirical look at how polite behavior will do you no favors in the face of glaring red flags, but the lack of survival instincts from the main protagonist drove me completely nuts. So the slight changes they made for the new film set a lot better for me than I'm sure it did for most fans of the original. The main characters still make some egg-headed decisions here and there, but hey, it's better than sitting back and letting it all happen, I suppose. Another reason I dug this more over the original was for James McAvoy, who gives a chilling performance as the film's charmingly deceptive villain. While I do kinda agree that it probably would have stood out more had it maintained the original's bleak ending to a certain extent, I still think it's a pretty entertaining movie to put on every spooky season. Okay, I'll get to you already. Just stop with the light switch. Robert Eggers' reimagining of the 1922 silent film classic was a great Christmas gift to all who love cinema and gothic tales of vampires and toxic love triangles. This film just reeks of pure dark atmosphere and features an onslaught of amazing production value, jaw-dropping cinematography, and an outstanding cast ensemble that includes the Green Goblin, Lex Luthor, Princess Diana, Kraven the Hunter, a former yoga hoser, and last but certainly not least, the completely unrecognizable Bill Skarsgård as the film's Dracula stand-in, Count Orlok. His performance in particular still puts me in a state of disbelief knowing that not only is it him underneath all that incredible makeup, but that's his actual deep-sounding and room-vibrating vocals.
I might ease your wound. Crazy. cheesy style.
This is a masterclass in genre filmmaking, as well as the reason why a relatively young director like Robert Eggers is keeping the magic of cinema alive. But if you're in the mood for something that's a little more original in this category, then hopefully our last pick should help satiate those longing appetites. This one comes to us from the creative team behind the Quiet Place series and stars Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East as two young unsuspecting Mormon girls who find themselves trapped in a very unsettling religious-themed game of cat and mouse by a mysterious stranger played by a devilishly mesmerizing Hugh Grant.
And I should know, I spent 3 years in Les Miserables.
Unlike most horror films that focus more on jump scares and blood-soaked thrills, this one hinges greatly on dialogue-driven scenes that demand your full attention on where this labyrinthine plotted movie will take you next. Granted, the final moments of the movie is usually where it tends to split most audience opinions, but personally, I was on board the whole way through. It's a creepy, funny, and intelligent thriller about confronting unwavering certainty with challenging questions, which I'm sure is bound to leave a long-lasting impression for years to come. Now let's speed things up a little bit with our last 5 films in our remaining category, prestigious highlights, reserved for critically acclaimed, artsy-fartsy type films that usually get nominated for big awards or fail trying. Featured in this lineup, we have another notable A24 produced film, Baby Girl, about a steamy, kinky, and dairy-friendly love affair between a CEO and her young intern that's overall provocative and well-made, but having the very handsome and chiseled screen presence of Antonio Banderas play the cuckold husband who can't bring his wife to climax might be a stretch too far for most viewers.
Banderas described it as the most challenging role of his career.
Gladiator 2, which is another example of why Ridley Scott has the same issues with follow-up sequels as Todd Phillips due to its lengthy runtime, boring leads, and repetitive callbacks to its superior predecessor, and yet this one's still worth checking out despite all of its problems, mostly due to the very fun and charismatic performance by Denzel Washington.
And I love that.
Juror number 2, a star-studded and thought-provoking morality tale directed by Hollywood legend Clint Eastwood about an average citizen who finds himself tiptoeing the line between avoiding justice and upholding the law, which actually feels less criminal than how Warner Brothers poorly treated this movie. Megalopolis, the biggest, most notorious box office disaster from another legendary filmmaker, Francis Ford Coppola, that I admire a great deal, but I just can't bring myself to love due to how convoluted, nonsensical, and quite frankly bad this whole thing turned out. And finally, Saturday Night, Jason Reitman's nail-bitingly intense and extremely funny recreation of the egocentric, drug-fueled, and anxiety-induced chaos that occurred within the 90 minutes before the airing of the very first episode of Saturday Night Live. It's one of the best movies I've seen about a rough and wild behind-the-scenes story that gives you a better appreciation of the folks that still, to this day, work on the production side of SNL. Also, I really hope the casting director got a big fat raise because these young actors filling in the shoes of the OG SNL cast could not have been more perfect. And that concludes this very special episode of Shortcut Reviews. Now we leave it up to you. What did you guys think of all these movies featured? Let us know in the comments section down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon if you want to keep up with new stuff from this channel in the near future. Until then, I'm the host, and I will see you next time on either another Midnight Movie Madness or another round of Shortcut Reviews. Take care now.